I
think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody on the step together. Okay,
Also,
3, 2, 1, let's go.
and I'm live on Skype. What is up? Yo, you there?
Yep, trying to call on Skype.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there it is. Them twinkle tones. Where's our two-shot? What'd you do? What'd you do with that? All right. All right. Are we ready?
I'm hearing an echo.
Oh. How about now?
Nice.
Come at me, bro.
Nice.
Oh, hells yeah. It's 4 o'clock during the apocalypse. Where you at? Welcome to Happy Hour. Hello, folks. I'm Brian Brushwood, joined by Justin Robert Young. How you doing, bud?
Yo. What's going on, man? What's up?
I got things to share, but
Share him up.
well, before I do that, can I wax a little philosophicalist?
Philly it up, man.
I was talking
Philly
to
cheesesteak.
I was talking to a very talented magician friend of mine who largely is spending the pandemic taking care of his kids because his wife is in the healthcare industry. And I don't know. I talked a lot about how much I'm just constantly crying playing The Last of Us Part 2, and how, you know, I don't want to chase that thread, but basically, like there's moments in The Last of Us, both Part 1 and Part 2, where it's just like, God damn, man, I sure hope when I'm long dead and gone that my daughters have memories like these, and this particular memory. This particular moment happened to be like it was a moment about a moment that she's remembering about a dad figure, and I realized that I was like, man, I hope someday my kid thinks of me that way. And then I realized that sitting there next to her at the PS4, we were shaping that moment, and you know I burst into tears or whatever. And I sort of asked my friend how he was doing, and he said that you know, there's tedium because he's taking care of the kids while his wife works in the healthcare industry, but he's not afraid. And all of a sudden I realized that that's a fairly rare thing. Like, there are not just people on planet Earth today, but in the history of humanity, the number, I wonder what the number of people who are born, live their life, and die with the idea of what would you do if you weren't afraid is entirely theoretical. And I encouraged him to turn a mirror on that and realize that the fact that, you know, he basically spends most of his days playing with his kids, like that is theoretical heaven to not just most of humanity today, right now in 2020, but even more so in the history of humanity or whatever.
Well, and what's more is, let's say you are not afraid and you personally experience that. What is the likelihood that you want to express it to somebody else? Like right now, your friend is telling you that he's not afraid because fear is kind of the operating, you know, emotion surrounding us as extraordinary circumstances have gripped our globe. But the idea of saying, I'm not afraid of something, implies the existence that the majority of us are, right? like inherently in discussing it. And even then it is isolating. Like if you feel good, you know, if you're all hanging out and everybody you know makes minimum wage and all of a sudden you get a job for 6 figures, how much do you go and talk to your friends about it? How much is your life different past that? Like there's
it's so funny you bring that up.
It's crazy
because the example that I brought to him, and we've talked about this. It's a hard thing to step back away from the way you do things and really evaluate what it is you really do. One person who has won at that game is your friend of mine, Jordan Gold, who, along with Max Temkin, co-creator of Cards Against Humanity, they did that Kickstarter for 3 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles that have a magic trick. I still don't know what the magic trick is.
The magic trick may or may not have been disappearing pledges after all the Max Temkin stuff came out.
Put a pin in that because I am unfamiliar. I'm
well. Let's do our research off the straight because I don't want to. I mean, obviously we've had him on the show, and like I don't want to even get into anything that might be read as
I will
the wrong way.
This is the first I'm hearing of whatever this is, so we'll find out. Put a pin in that. Like Jordan Gold is no less of a magician for changing his storytelling venue away from appearing live in front of an audience and instead designing an experience, right? And I don't know. I encourage. Sounds like I should probably get away from that particular part of the story. But I encouraged my friend to you toured a lot and you did a show a lot, but also you've done. And I'm uncomfortable specifically mentioning the other awesome things he's done for fear of because I don't
identifying him or
I just don't have permission to tell this story. You know, it was a very special moment that we just had. But the idea that it's like if you could just rechannel that into a different, check the weather, figure out what's the best way to. Let me simplify. It was a hard thing for me to admit to myself that I'm not a magician. What I am is a storyteller who predominantly used magic in the venue of a live stage show to, tell whatever story I have to tell. When you back out, and then I became a storyteller who realized he could use his experience of magic to tell a story to a bigger audience if I virtualized everything in YouTube and then also on various other platforms and so on. Anyway, so I encouraged this person to back up and figure out what the bigger story is that he has to tell and to realize that, the number of people in humanity, full stop, who ever experience one moment of like not being afraid compared to the number of people who are born, live, and die with the idea of ever like that's the motivational prompt is what would you do if you weren't afraid? I don't know. I suppose I challenged him to come up with like, well, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Also, convenient side note, currently, you just told me you're not afraid. Also, convenient side note, this is the rarest condition of a human being in the history of human beings. So with all of that in mind, what would you do if you were you right now in heaven where your day consisted of playing with your kids and trying to think of what you wanted to do?
So your point is that he is still, if even reflexively, holding himself back from points in which he would have been afraid?
No, I think the surprise to me was we started the phone call, and the first words I said was, "Oh man, are you feeling it?" And then the response was, "Yeah, man, I'm really feeling it. I mean, it's rough." and then I had him describe his day, and he's talking about playing with his kids or whatever. And so I spent 15 minutes explaining the plot of the first, game and a half of The Last of Us, and then I went into 5 minutes of my shabby Tony Robbins. You can either feel the fear or feel the gift, and what's the gift, right? And I don't know. We'll see what he does, but I guess all of this is to lead up to me asking you, man, are you feeling the fear or are you feeling the gift?
Like in my life right now?
Yeah, today. I'm putting my finger in my mouth. I'm holding it up. I'm feeling the wind. I'm checking the weather.
I'm feeling very productive. I'm feeling very, very good about, there was a point in which I hit a couple, maybe a year ago, where I kind of realized that what I needed to do, like the lesson that I had kind of been operating on was freedom, max freedom, right? Like that what I wanted to do was whatever I wanted to do, and everything holistically kind of added up to the life I wanted to live. And if I was not living the life I wanted to live, then I needed to just do whatever I wanted. And that's why I didn't like vacations. And that's why I didn't like, other elements of what people think to be a like rewarding life, was because I want to reward myself in my daily life. I want to make everything be something that I am happy with. And what I found is that was a good lesson to get. And I'm glad I got to that point in terms of my life of being able to make my own money, even more so these days. But what if I was
who's going to be the 1,000th patron?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. The thought for me though was like, okay, well, where am I in my larger career? Right? Like where, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry, your video froze. I didn't know if it was a total internet thing for me.
No, sometimes I do that. I like to shake things up.
It's a very pensive look for both.
It's a power move that I learned in NLP, where it's like freeze your video randomly. It keeps them off kilter.
Yeah, keeps them guessing. But no, I wanted to. I didn't want to sell myself on the fallacy that like, okay, I'm going to keep doing me, and then the world will discover me. I need to continue to build out my art to be something that is more understood as quality by an average person they don't know that I'm their favorite yet, but they do require, the metaphorical shoes and shirt, to even consider where things are. And that's where a lot of audio quality stuff. That's where I stopped recording the podcast live, because I wanted to edit them more. I wanted to put more time and effort into that. I wanted to make everything sound like, play my stuff after highly produced stuff and see how far that gulf was. And there was a whole year that I had planned out for which, that was going to be a continuing part of it. And I was seeing kind of results. I mean, like really 2 years worth of results were kind of paying off at the very beginning of this year. And then coronavirus hit. And then I was fucking really bummed out. And I was really, going through the stages of like denial, like, well, in 3 weeks when this shit fucking clears up, like it's gonna be fine, like, and then bargaining of like, oh well, maybe I'll just do a little thing, or like, and that was really like, that was what Crystal was like, I knew I was depressed, I knew that I didn't want to work on stuff, and then also like things that I had planned for Raise the Dead life wound up getting in the way in terms of some of the predictions that I was making of how this election was going to turn out. Oof. But and so I needed to redo that.
It does seem like it's a fairly safe assumption to build a business on the idea that, well, at least there'll be something funny about one or the other of the two candidates. And then you roll 7.
Well, or no, really, I mean, it was Bernie. I thought it was going to be I thought Bernie was going to do it, and I was wrong. But I still wound up getting a good episode for the next season. Anyway, the long and the short of it was, all of a sudden, all the stuff that I had planned for the year kind of went away, and that's really where I felt the drag. The drag was not in. I mean, obviously, it's like, yes, and it's the world, but all politics is local, so everything was inside my own head. Like now, things are fucking great. Like I am flying, doing a lot of good work on a lot of things that I don't want to talk about because I know I work less on them the more I talk about them. I'm feeling good exercise wise, diet wise. Like, I am in a very, very, very productive mode. And, I'm feeling good about everything. And I'm feeling good about the position that I'm in and what I can do. We had the big conversation on this show a couple of weeks ago about like where my larger goals were. And ultimately, the more that I've thought about that, the more that I've kind of realized that like the element for me that I need to be comfortable with is my own work. Whether or not my own work is something that I know both financially and artistically gives me license to demand what I want from larger platforms and allows me to say no to larger platforms. Like that's inherently my distrust, is that going after a larger platform means that I'm putting all the things that I know I can do by myself, the freedom that I can have by myself, on hold, or it damages it, even if just internally, because that to me is always where I have personally and throughout my own existence, I've watched the damage, the actual damage be done in terms of chasing the bigger thing, whatever that bigger thing is, especially in this day and age where it's like, back in the day, if it's like, oh, I'm going to pause working on my novel so I can go work at the New Yorker. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to know what, at the end of the day, you probably do 10 years of the New Yorker and then you're going to be able to publish that novel. But now when you can directly connect to everything, and it's almost the safer bet to have a more distributed income model in the world of creativity, like that's kind of what it is for me. And so that's what I'm focusing on, and that's what I've been happy about.
So there's 2 threads that I'll try to fuse, because I think we're on the same wavelength. One, a lot of what you just mentioned, as you were saying it, I realized is in that wonderful, wonderful book, Unfuck Yourself. I forget the author's name, but it was so good that I'm saving it as a treat to reread it. But basically, it's imagine a bitter Scottish stoic looking you right in the eye and calling out your bullshit.
Yeah.
And one of the things he says in there is, he says there's power in the phrase, I am willing. And, you're like, yeah, I get it. I'm willing to get up in the morning and run. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to whatever. But then he makes the point that there's also an equal amount of power in I am not willing to do blank. And if you sketch out what you're not willing to do, then you can take certain things off the table and you can stop expecting them to happen. We've talked a little bit about this. Like I
think
realize,
you've explained this. Yeah, maybe it was on weird things, but please go.
I think it was pre-happy hour, but for the uninitiated, we were talking about, like, I realized, like, oh wait, no, I'm straight up unwilling to do the things that it will take to have a primetime magic special. I'm not willing to go on the road, be away from the family, subject myself to the criticism, the polish, make the investment, refine my body, blah, 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 blah. And once you realize that you're not willing to do those things, then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, that's off the table. So every morning I wake up, I don't have to feel guilty that I don't have a primetime magic special, right? So, separate thread, so we can collapse these. I got my kids to watch Fight Club.
Okay.
I did not see this coming. And there is to collapse the thread, because there is an interesting tale of how we got there, but it makes me think of that moment that Tyler Durden is saying, like, hey man, we're all raised to believe that we're going to be, rock stars and gods, but we're not, and we're slowly figuring that out, and we're very, very angry. In some way, I feel like the pandemic has given us permission to let go of certain things. I mean, in the case of Fight Club, I mean, that's a nihilistic, half the movie is a nihilistic message of trying to hit bottom, as if anything's better at the bottom. But the message about, like, there's more joy on the other side of realizing what you can do than sitting back and waiting. It's like, well, I would do this good thing, but there might be the best thing waiting for me or whatever. And when you are in the middle of World War II, London being bombed, all of a sudden, all your priorities shift, right? All of a sudden you realize, like, you know what? I just want to love a girl, and I want to bring home a steady paycheck, and I want to make babies. Congratulations. We are all in World War II London being bombed, and we can focus on the fear that we're experiencing, or we can focus on the gift that was sort of the whole half of the point of Fight Club, which is if you're holding off for anything because you think there's a better whatever.
Yeah.
How about you just love who you are? And for me, it's fine, man. I'm going to be a guy who did pretty good. Picture your tombstone. Today, Brian Brushwood died. Here's his obituary. He was pretty good at YouTube. Had a show once, but mainly loved to teach the same 297 tricks that were his favorite and introduce a lot of people into magic. I think of Don Herbert, like Mr. Wizard. I'm okay. Yeah. I'm okay with being Don Herbert. I'm okay with dying knowing that my kids loved me and that I brought people into magic. I'm okay with maybe what I'm really thinking about is that I had the opportunity to meet Martin Gardner before he passed. Martin Gardner, legendary mathematician and philosopher. Like I saw him before he passed, and I'm going to be that. That's me. That's me in however many decades.
And look, who knows exactly how our legends mean more to the people they are told to than they mean to us. Right. Like our reputations mean more to those outside of us. So it's like us judging our own legacies are ultimately a fruitless gesture. Like it is a pretend exercise because we haven't actually wrestled with our own self-esteem. And so we look for outside validation, even with that, like even in our final moments, when we're thinking about, are we good or are we bad? Are we happy or are we sad? We turn to a legacy or a reputation argument so we can make ourselves feel better when really it's like, yeah, maybe you do everything, and in your mind, the projected other person that's taking in all your work thinks that you're 50 times better, that you're actually way more influential, that you're amazing, and that you're great, right? Or maybe, especially something that we've thought a little bit more about these days, there's an element of your personality that, even though your simulacrum of the random person says it, then there's some element of you that they find bad. The point isn't that it's better or worse. The point is that you have literally no control of it, nor are you really able to comprehend it, because Martin Gardner's view of his own work was not what your view was. And,
Right.
and I'm sure Martin Gardner found it odd that all these young magicians made a pilgrimage out to an old folks home so they could pay homage. I'm sure he thought that everybody was really nice. And I guess this is just what happens when you get old, is, people come in to see you, but didn't realize that you would be having this conversation about him right now, that as you're contemplating your own legacy, you are putting, I got to meet Martin Gardner like on the list of insane things. I don't know if he would even
Martin
have
Gardner
the
was here,
capacity
he
for
would
that.
say like, "Oh, don't. Why are you adding that? You got more room. You could put something better in there." So what it reminds me of is, and you and I have talked about this, where it's like TV is all bullshit, right? Anybody who ever has a TV thing that's about to happen almost certainly is not going to happen. Also, that's and all, to put it in context, hello, anyone under 20, TV used to matter. but there was friends of ours, I guess I shouldn't name them by name, but no, I will name them by name. It was I was talking to Corey and Martin. I think it was Martin I was talking to. They had a local movie review show that they were working on that might have been about to expand or get bigger. I forget the details, but they did that. He did that thing where he's like, where I started to say congratulations, and he started to say a version of like, well, I mean, it almost certainly won't happen. And
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I realized, and you and I have talked about this, where it's like, I'm like, hey, almost certainly nothing will come of this. The best it's going to be is right now.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be a shame if you didn't even bother to enjoy?
Give yourself
right
credit.
now?
Yeah.
Right. So very likely I will not usurp Penn and Teller or David Copperfield or anyone who came before me for anything ever, for any reason. But wouldn't it be a shame if I died without ever leaning back and saying, it's pretty cool having that studio. It was a lot of fun having that team. It was pretty great that for, 12 years plus, Justin and I farted around on the internet and somehow made a living doing it.
I would say that is something that in my view of the world, like, does make you bigger than David Copperfield or Penn and Teller, or people that are going to look at those guys and, yeah, look, their careers are what they are, but we're not living in a world where everybody plays by the same scoreboards anymore. Like that's a fundamental thing that I think that you, and to a certain extent me, will never be able to unhardwire from our brains, is that we used to live in a monoculture, but we're fucking 2 decades on from Pangea splitting, and like there is no, yeah, we can do our own imaginary world rankings of like what it costs to do this, and like, look, in another world, like, all right, let me put it this way. To your point about like, I'm not willing to say that I would want another magic thing. And so that's a thing that now you can wake up every day and there's peace in knowing that that's not what you were looking for. But let's be honest about exactly what that means right now. Like, let's say, and there's that now with everything crazy with the pandemic and everything, that NBC, let's say, or CBS, just because of the Copperfield shit, right? CBS says, man, Brian Brushwood, we want you to do a special. We think you can shoot it all there. We'll send you in some help. And could you have a special ready for us within the next, 3 months? And we'll shoot it on your property and it'll be a thing. And we're going to put a bunch of promo into it. And it's going to be on all of our other cross-distributional like platforms, blah, blah, blah. The works. Everything that would be exactly duplicative of a Copperfield special in the 80s. What would it matter now? It wouldn't matter what it mattered for Copperfield, and it certainly wouldn't matter what it mattered for Copperfield to you as Brian Brushwood, watching it in your living room or whatever, right? Now, what is the Copperfield in the living room experience for the Brian Brushwood fan? Like that's really what you need to be thinking is like, you're never going to be able to chase the ghost. Even if you were, I guess my larger point is, if you were literally by the metrics as big or bigger than David Copperfield, you in your head would never be as big or bigger than David Copperfield. And you would rather just be chasing this, what happens in those instances, and you've seen this with magicians specifically, is then you get into the ego battle, because anybody who came up behind somebody else wants is the lead dog to say, you did it, kid. You got to where I am. And nobody, especially in that world, wants to do that. So then it becomes resentful. And then it becomes, well, fuck you. By these numbers, I'm great, which is really just somebody saying, I don't think I'm as good as you, sir, but louder. And so knowing that is what it is, like really the only gift that you can have, the real true worth, the real way to be David Copperfield, to surpass Penn and Teller, is to say, I have my audience. How do I give them Penn and Teller, my Penn and Teller get killed? How do I give them my version of Vanishing the Statue of Liberty? How do I make these, if I'm going to take this template, how do I make these moments for these people that pay attention to me the way that I paid attention to them?
Goddamn right, man. What a very well put, because even when you win and cross the finish line, everybody's clapping and cheering for you for crossing the finish line, and you look down and your finish line is that much farther, and you perceive that you didn't
it's just never
or whatever.
Yeah, it's never gonna be there. And even if you do, when you get the attaboy, you're like, nah, fuck, he went soft. Like, like there's this element, or you're like, you get there and somebody says, great job, I'm so proud of you, and you're like, and sometimes it feels really good. Sometimes it is something that you definitely need to hear. I don't want to say that people giving you encouragement is a bad thing. It's a very, very good thing. But oftentimes it rings hollow. Oftentimes, like that's what it is. And I think it's because what we want is our self-esteem. And we think that self-esteem is going to come in success. We think that self-esteem is going to come in validation, but it's not. Like, validation is a totally separate muscle than self-esteem. Self-esteem is its own
and here's
internal process.
Here's the great betrayal is that I think we all know that validation, the thing we really want, is available in our own internal bank vault at all times, but we just deny it to ourselves. We know where it is. We know it's right inside there. And we even know the code. Beep bop boop bop boop. I have it. It's validation, right? I don't know. There's something. You think about those life and death situations, those fatalistic, people who are in wars or pandemics or what have you. And I don't know. The phrase that really hit me was, "Wouldn't it be a shame if you weren't even able to give yourself permission to appreciate it?" Or look, that's another fatalistic message of Fight Club, which, by the way, I watch like every 2 years, and I get something different out of it each time. I guess it's like going to church or whatever. But
A noted thing that happens once every 2 years.
Yes. That moment of...
And involves Helena Bottom Carter's tits.
Yes. That moment of, like, it's not a question of if you're going to die. It's a matter of when. And none of this is going to matter. And wouldn't it be a shame? Wouldn't it be a shame if you didn't even enjoy it while you had it?
Well, I mean, fucking life goes quick. You know, I look back on elements. I had an interview with an old friend of mine who runs a website out in Dallas called Central Track. And as we were figuring out how long we've known each other, he's like, yeah, we've known each other for 17 years. And it's like, it's a college friend. And I'm like, oh, shit, man. Like, life goes fucking fast, man. Like, life moves at a pretty fucking quick clip. And I think that might also be part of it, is that in the first world, and I would include America, and I would say, regardless of our
Bold
personal
choice,
social strata,
including
right?
America in the first world.
Well, yeah. We've got a lot we can distract ourselves with for relatively cheap, and we've got the money to do it. Like, even if you are below the poverty line, there are more ways to distract yourself than almost anywhere on the planet. Specifically, if you were considered in poverty in other places around the globe, right? So we are our culture is among the most that we can just go. There's always a thing. There's always a next thing. Like, you know, and it's never more clear than what's happening now, where we're just watching pass without fanfare. Like, oh, that would have been opening day for baseball. That would have been when Wonder Woman opened. That would have been when the Christopher Nolan movie opened. Oh, here's when we would be doing spring training for football, or this would be the All-Star game. Like, oh, all these things just fucking like ghost ships just kind of like pass by us because they're not happening because of this thing. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, we normally have our activity schedule pretty fucking packed. Like, there's not a lot of room to breathe in general. We have it now. And so that's where I think when you're looking at this period as an element of self-actualization, you can say, well, you can't just go out and get drunk with your buddies. You can't just go. I mean, at least some people fucking can, but that's a whole different story. But like, you can't just go do this thing or the other thing. You can't just be planning for this other thing that's going to happen. Not to say that there's not worth in there, but if you wanted self-improvement, self-actualization, like, hey, you know, if I ever had time, I do Blop. Blop's here, baby. Like, you know, now you have to wrestle with, well, why didn't I want to do Blop? Why didn't I do Blop? Like, why did a Blop seem unattainable to me when now I can just literally take one step a day and be closer to it?
I mean, I guess the visualization I have is, imagine sitting down at a fancy ass restaurant and they're handed the menu and it's literally the size of a dictionary and you're going through everything and you're like, oh, well, I guess I could. And then all of a sudden there's an earthquake and you look down and now all the pages are blank except for one, and it says a hamburger. Like, seems like continuing to flip through that that menu would be a dumb waste of time. Or you could just have that fucking hamburger, bro. Like, I mean,
I'll tell you
they
what,
apparently have that.
I had a moment today where I've been trying out these new like workout things or whatever. And so like one of them had like burpees, right? So if you're not familiar with it, it's like you jump up, you put your hands down on the ground, you kick your legs out, you do a push up, you kick your legs back, you jump back up, right? And I was not having an easy time working on it. I wasn't exactly in love with like the form of it, right? I had to do a bunch of them, but in a
Bold
different
take, by the
version
way,
of me.
because everybody loves burpees. When I talk to people about working out, they're like, "Oh my God, are we to the burpees yet?"
Here's my point. My point is that there would have been a version of me that would have gotten very frustrated with myself. There would have been a version of me that then would have blamed the 20 years that I wasn't as physically active as I wish I would have been. And at the age of 37, that now I want to do fucking burpees. I would have gotten angry at my past decisions and I would have let that cloud the moment. But when I've ordered my schedule pretty well, there's not a whole lot else to fucking do. Instead, I just kind of calmed down and try to do fucking better burpees and just was secure in my understanding that, like, hey, this is going to get better. And I do think that kind of stuff, that is cyclical, or sorry, not cyclical, systemic to you just doing things. It's like the same thing with like Raise the Dead, where I had like shitty Raise the Dead versions. Like, I just knew, all right, I knew one of the hardest fucking but necessary moments, like a real decision gate, was when you gave me a call and said, this is good. You could release this. The people that already love you would love you if you release this. Re-record it, because it's too good to not be reordered and re-recorded. And
by the way,
knowing how much work that would take,
I still feel bad. Like, that was unpleasant to say and think and
necessary,
and share.
Necessary, absolutely necessary. You should not feel if I have not said out loud
you have
that was a very transformative experience, then please understand that you are a necessary voice. And by the way, necessary in that not a whole lot of other people. It turns out I'm too likable for most of my friends to give me fucking like some
everybody else was
truth.
just like, it's great, this is amazing, you should release it or whatever.
And look, to be fair, a lot of what people loved about the show were in those things, but you gave me the lesson that I was looking for. The lesson I was looking for was, no, I want to be, if I'm in between you listening to this thing from this Spotify exclusive and this NPR a series or whatever, that mine isn't like, oh, this is the garbage thing I'm listening to because I like the person. It's like they sound similar, right? Like one might sound like, the guy who wrote it, edited it, which Raise the Dead likely always will, but so does Darknet Diaries. And Darknet Diaries to me is an amazing show that deserves all the praise that it gets.
Yeah.
So does You Must Remember This. As long as I can meet a minimum threshold, and I had not yet met that minimum threshold. Now, it didn't take a lot. It took a few fiddlings on my board. It took me taking the time to go and do it. Taking the time to go and do it also gave me permission to re-record things that needed to be resaid, that I probably would have been more in a nip tuck kind of thing.
That was a similar circumstance. There was an ad that we were doing remote, and so there's two different cameras, two different places. Me and Jason were supposed to. I've already forgotten what it was, but we kind of do one take, we do a second take, we feel like we landed the third take. It was a new sponsor, we learned all the things or whatever, and then like that night, right before bed, I get a text saying, bad news, video footage on the other end is totally unusable. We're going to have to shoot it first thing in the morning. I was like, fuck. And so genuinely, bummed that we did all like, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours of work for nothing. Came in first thing that next morning, easily, like light years better take.
Ripped. Yeah.
We knew all the talking points. We knew exactly what we were riffing on. We knew all the whatever, like not just a little bit better, but like next level better, like a different team better.
And that's the thing. At that point, then you start asking yourself, oh shit, obviously we don't want to like do a thing for 2 hours and then be told that it doesn't work and then reshoot it again. But is there a element of this that I can take and put into the creative process going forward? Like now that's a lesson. Like, would it be worth it to try and bang out all the ads before we start recording a thing? And then at the end of when we're done recording, try to just try to rip through them like as fast as we can, just to see whether or not that's there, and we can get a better, more electric kind of take on it. Like there's a lot.
I was about to say that it's a trope that in production, it's like, you do it, you get a good take, a solid take, a safety take, and then you just casually say like, I don't know, give me just a crazy over the top one just for fun. And then 100% of the time, that's the
always
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's like the thing I was chasing was freedom. Let me put it this way. Revolutionaries often don't make good governors. Like revolutionaries usually get killed after the revolution succeed because they're not good at actually running shit. They're good at breaking shit.
Right.
They're not great at building shit.
And good at recognizing what parts need to be broken. Whereas just like, I bet a bomb on that part of that dam would break that dam. And then it's like, we're like, great. Well, now what we need is electricity and to stop all this water.
Yeah. And also the guy who runs the electricity, you killed his sister because she was transporting a thing. And the guy with the rocks, like they're still actually loyal to the old regime. So like, they're never going to fucking deal with you. Like it's revolutionaries don't make good governors. What I wanted was a revolutionary way of living. What I realized I needed was a new government. And it meant that the things that I was rebelling against, up to and including like schedules, when shit's going to get done, how long I'm going to spend on it. Like I didn't have just a magical thing in my head that was like, that's quality. You want to know what the best is? Me, unfiltered. Like it's very seductive, especially when you're making your living doing it, to think that way. But, ultimately what I needed was more structure. I needed to have more of more guardrails. I needed to have more defined goals. I needed to succeed at those goals, and I needed to succeed at those goals on a regular basis, or else my personality type will default to fuck it. I'm the boss. I do what I want. It's like,
which by the way is very easy to tell yourself if you've sold yourself the narrative of, well, I'm only here until the real thing comes along. And if you don't recognize that this is as real as it's ever going to get in your creative life, then bad news, bro. You miss it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I think the success of everybody around us is inspiring, and also it's my goal amongst all of us is like to keep having us push stuff forward. Because if there's one thing that I would say our crew, and I'm talking about Tom and Scott and you and me, if there's one thing that we can fall into, and this is not, I think, a character flaw, more just a occupational hazard of doing regular content all the time, is boy, it's easy to take your foot off the how do we make this 10x better thing, and plaque builds up in your decision making, and whether or not it's everything should be 10x better, that's fine. Think about it. Think about how you can refine the things that you are already doing. Think about the ways that you can do it. And that's what I want to do for myself. And that's what I want for all of my friends. That's what I want for everybody listening, is to just always, like, at least if you have a personality type like me, happiness is a bunch of little goals that I can complete every day that make the big goals look smaller. And it makes, when you look back, you're like, fuck, I came a long way. Like I was doing fucking, I went back and listened to an old PX3 podcast with me and John Teasdale. So this is like post Contender, like this is well into things. And it's like the fucking noise on the background was like unlistenable. Like I was like, what the fuck? This is dog shit.
That is definitely like, I look at those very first episodes of Scam School from 2008 and I'm like, and I just marvel. And I was like, I went with Revision 3 because I was blown away at their production capabilities. And it's like looking at that again, thank you to everybody at Revision 3, but whoo boy, your confidence in your, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Spielberg, winces when he looks at Jaws or Close Encounters or whatever.
I don't think that it's a it is not a measure of quality. It's a measure of progress.
Yeah.
And it's a measure of like, you're very well aware of what you fixed because you fucking took the time to fix it. Like the reason why I focus so much on the audio is because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing with my board. I didn't know how to fucking balance audio. I didn't know. And then I was recording it right into fucking Audacity and then publishing it as soon as I hit stop. Like, and now, because I don't have a fucking like a sound. I have a good looking studio. I don't have a great sounding studio. Now I do a lot of post in Audition to get sound to where I want. And even now there's artifacts that I'm like, fuck, I forgot to fix that when I go back and listen to shit. But it's like,
it's funny because that applies not only to the technical beats, but also to the storytelling beats. Like, I think you and I have gotten so much better about speaking in complete sentences without all of the semantic crutches, the ands, the ums, and all of that stuff.
Sure.
We've gotten better about pacing of storytelling, breaking everything into acts and beats and all of the stuff. But you still notice.
Yeah. I mean, and I hope I do always, because I want it to be better. I want to look at the stuff that I look at. I want season 5 of Raise the Dead to be fucking exponentially better than season 1, right? I want it to continue to get better and more interesting and a better product, because that's the one thing that we can always do is continue to improve. We can always look at some element of our life and say, how can we be better?
Man, I'm imagining season 5 of Raise the Dead, and I'm thinking of it like in 4-year increments by each election, and I'm imagining that 20 years from now, you'll be able to do a Raise the Dead about the Trump election, linking it to
another election.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said after Brian praised him for not saying
no, that's fine. I mean,
I know. I'm joking. This arc will be 3 seasons. There's going to be 3 seasons, 60, 64, 68, because that kind of is the wrap of all of our kind of like main characters. That's where everybody like you will follow. Yeah, you will follow that class to its end there.
Well, and the nice thing is, no matter which way this election goes, we're either following a similar time stream or this is where we diverge. And 4 years from now, we could talk about like, now if we were on the original timeline, it would look like this. We're on this crazy timeline.
To be honest, I also don't know even how much. We'll see how much that element of the podcast survives. Though, like, I think I got some good stuff in this next season, where it's like, oh shit, there's a lot that's similar, or like, wow, these things, like, but it's more in a historical context kind of way, and not in like a secret, but did you know history kind of way.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how this one evolves, and then the next one.
I know Mitsula is not here, but just lay some odds. What are the odds that an old white man wins? Be honest.
In both elections, bigly.
Okay. What? All right. Question. And you don't have to pick for sure. You don't have to state it explicitly. Just sort of hint whether or not he's the type of old white man whose teeth falls out, or the type of old white man whose eyes explode in the middle of a debate.
I mean, we still got plenty of time for everybody to meet in the middle on that one. So I would say both.
Is it the type of old man who people imply is racist, or the type of old man who people imply on stage live in the middle of a debate that there might be racist despite having labored to ease racial tensions? Okay. All right. No. Just, all right. Last one. Is it the type?
Yeah.
Will the next president be the type of person where when they start talking, you'll wonder whether or not they'll be able to land the sentence?
Man. So Biden did a press conference today.
Yeah.
And he mostly got softballs and then got one, like literally he kept staying on stage because he loves answering fucking questions. And he finally got one dude who fucking hit him with the one live round at the very end, which was like, have you been tested for your cognitive slippage? And
oh my God.
And his answer was I
knew a guy named Corn Pop.
Yeah. No, his answer was like, I forget what it was, some version of, well, just look at me. And I was like, I don't know if you want
to go there. It's like, why do you think I asked the question? It's like saying, it's like saying, is that a fake Rolex? And it's like, the reason you asked the question.
Watch what I do. Watch what I do. That's what it was. He
watch
said,
what I do. Okay.
Watch what I do. And I'm just putting this together now because the other thing is that he said that he hadn't been coronavirus tested, but he did say that he's been tested for cognitive ability all the time, which means that he's apparently been tested 100% more for cognitive slippage than he has for coronavirus.
Is there a charitable version of that where what he meant was, hey man, every day I'm in the trenches, I'm being tested?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure that there's, I mean, what my brain is kind of like trained to scan now is not correct statements, not truthful statements, but vulnerable or offensive statements. That's really what because that's what in politics, that's what we tend to reward or to criticize are vulnerable statements or a successfully offensive statement. So we always reward the like, you, sir, are a piece of shit. Yay! Like, oh, offensive hit, right? Or like, do you agree with killing dogs? Well, I've never in this year thought about boo. Like we can pile on that you've at some point thought about that. Like a vulnerable statement. So it's like, I just look at him even taking that question and then saying like, watch what I do, being like, oh, that's an ad. That's it. Like, watch what, like, have you been tested? Watch what I do. Super cut of every time he's lost his place and like, all this other stuff. And then end with another weird thing. Like that's a vulnerable statement.
Oh my God. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, we can't end on that realization.
That little nugget.
No, I guess we can.
I guess we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah. No.
I mean, we have another 4 hours of broadcasting tonight.
Man, if only patrons would be able to get the pre-show, post-show, and all the content in between in their own feed.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Heading on over to patreon.com/Night Attack. We love you guys.
See ya.